talking about the beginnings of the work that I have been part of for so many years causes me to reflect about something very important. I was on a journey and I didn't realize it when I started, but the Chinese philosophers had a good way of talking about that. They said, "A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step," and so did I. I was going for my PhD in organizational studies at NYU, and there I was, still teaching, but this time multiply handicapped children. And they struggled in their life to empower themselves, and yet the core question that all of those 12 kids asked, and was expressed by little Suey, who was 11 years old. And I'm so moved about it, I kind of have to pause and say, "Suey, we're here for you." She said, "What is to become of me that I am handicapped?" And I tell everybody, that's why we started the National Christina Foundation. It was my answer to Suey that we were going to find solutions so that when you grow up, you will not be left out. But where do you begin? You establish an organization, co-founded, based on a very small experience, and yet it was a very large encounter. The small experience was, how can I get a computer into my classroom for these kids? Apple computers in those days had no hard drives, and they cost $2,500. There was no internet. There was an environment that was quite empty of solutions involving technology. One of the fathers of the children in the class became the person who donated the first computer to my story here. And in fact, asked me when I finished my PhD, would I leave Yonkers Public Schools and become someone who can start an organization. And I said to myself, my God, so that's why I was studying organizational theory. I was going to start an organization. Hadn't planned for that, but that's what happened. In 1975, I see that as our beginning. PL 94-142, the Education for Old Handicapped Children, was passed. I began to visit places the year that I left teaching. I went to George Mason University, I went over to Peabody, I went to Hopkins. I had to see first so I would understand the problem. But the person who helped me most was a guy named Steve Kaner. He was a biomedical engineer, and he worked with very handicapped children at St. Agnes Children's Rehab Hospital in New York. And I said to him, can I come and watch what you're doing with your switches that you've invented? Because he had connected toys to switches so a child who could not move their arms could play. And we began to explore together. I spent a lot of time in his lab watching what he was doing. And I explored a number of other places. The story speeds up because the more you give, the more you see the need. And we went to Apple Computer and asked them to donate some computers to us so we could try out this ideas that we have, but they didn't want to donate. So fortunately, my co-founder, who was an investment banker, said, all right, I'll pay for them. And he did. And they told the folks who were part of this, the Apple salespeople, that this was stuff that was going overseas, but they didn't tell them that they were going to be used by a not-for-profit organization who's experimenting with Apple equipment. But that wasn't enough in the starting days. The starting days needed more thinking and more interaction with people who could help make a difference, perhaps fund some of it, perhaps funding is not the answer, at least, contribute their thinking. I was in Maryland one week, another week I was over in Ohio. I started searching for user groups who were fixing equipment. Maybe they would help me in their attempts at reusing this equipment. We could expand our data here. And then I said, well, let me see, it's only the first year we're doing this. I need to have a bunch of people, adults now, meeting together who really, really, really want to make a difference for handicapped children. And so we gathered I invited about 70 different people from different walks of life in different places. And I said, come and think with us, please. And just that week, something interesting happened in the press. Business Week published its ongoing, issues that come out, but this one had on the cover of it 2 words, human capital. But not one person mentioned handicapped people. Were they going to continue to be unemployable because people didn't see them as able? So that began another set of visits on my part. I went up to Washington, National Council on Disability, met regularly. A very fine thinker, Sandy Perino, was running them. And what they need to be thinking about is how we can put everybody to work. I mean, isn't that the way technology is flowing? And I learned about something that was very interesting to me. The Boston Computer Exchange. What in the heck was that? So I went to see, and they were selling used equipment, and people were using the used equipment, giving it a second life. So I got very excited about that, and I kept on talking to this guy. How can we make this happen? We want more used equipment. He said, I'm going to an organization called Comdex, which is computer trade shows. You can share a booth with me. There we were, the only charity at the Comdex trade show, and people said, you do what? You give old computers? I said, what do you mean old computers? They're valuable. You can use them again until they don't have anything left in them to fix. But as long as they're repairable, they're useful. I learned how to talk to the business world. I had not known sufficiently how to do that. I knew how to talk to children and their parents and so forth, but this was a whole new vocabulary and a whole way of looking that intrigued me, because so much of the computers that were manufactured were resident in these corporate locations, and they were potential donors. Without asking them for money, at least we'd get a product that we could use and would make a difference to the populations we were serving. I was hearing things where I began to put together in my mind the logic system of how we could empower people of all kinds of needs, integrating them into a world that they were locked out of. And why should they be? I needed to find some good board members, people who would support me, and in fact, they were still, to this very day, part of the organization. Aaron Woods, Sue Krautbauer. They stuck with me through thick and thin. No matter what was happening, they were there to say, right on, girl, go, go. So one day, I literally stood up at a board meeting that is National Christina Foundation, I said, you know something, I'm doing all this stuff, but I need a state. I need a state because if I have a state, then I can try things in a larger geographic area instead of sending a computer here and sending this there. I picked the state of Maryland because it has 24 counties and the state superintendent knows everybody by their first name. I was introduced to the person who was this assistant superintendent for special education. And they were assigning me 2 people to write the state plan. So there I was. I had a place that I could play with because I had the state ed department behind me and a place that was actually pretty forward in their thinking about technology. We began to analyze what did we need. We needed a place to fix the equipment. The state said, no problem. We have an empty psychiatric hospital. You can have the whole floor and you set it up any way you need to. Visited general services, talked to them about equipment. It was very ceremonially fun because everybody was participating, whether they were a high level, low level, mid level. We were people together helping. And I thought back to my dissertation again when the institution was relating to the individuals and the whole normative side of life and the fancy things they were thinking about. But then I thought of the part of the work that was done by the people who related to the establishment and what did that ultimately enable us to do. Because all the user groups who were fixing those, they were citizens. They weren't employed. And we harnessed the power of citizens to do this. That was the beginning of me feeling really comfortable about spreading our work around the country, because I had to learn a lot of issues in the testing ground that Maryland provided us. The process of dealing with the world of technology today, for example, has changed considerably. All of a sudden, technology is seen as a central tool that must be used to empower the corporation in a variety of ways. And yet, the new things that are invented over the course of time, when we examine that, everyone says technology has changed the whole, we've become a digital economy. We are a digital economy that enables us to perform things that were never possible in years past. And yet, if you look at the role of advancement, inventions, whatever they may be, over time, in every period, that has changed and redesigned how man copes with manufacturing, with agriculture, with all kinds of ways of enhancing their ability to be productive. You have the ecosystem around it has to do with the limits that the world can provide, but then there's another piece in it. The other piece in it is the social situation that is part of it, so that where do we perform best to help people? How we're applying it when we are looking at a world now that is ecosystem-led in a way that is enabling people to become stronger in what they can do, because the digital ecosystems that we function in at Digitunity, which in 2020 was the organization that NCF had to become, because we had to function in the real world, and today's world cannot be limited to just a circular economy. And I think when you are building solutions and you're collaborating with many levels in the community, when you are networking with different levels of organizations that maybe in the old school you wouldn't have thought they fit, but they are now bringing solutions into the community as well, all of a sudden you are engaging people in a new way that empowers everybody collectively. I mean, is our job just to come in as the people who know everything and and you are going to impart them with your great knowledge? Or are you going to engage them so they're part of the solution that we all need for a community to thrive? We have to look at those systems and see what are the barriers, what are the problems that we are looking at. Are we asking the right questions? Are we looking at the right sources? Are we finding the right combination of people? But if you don't have these computers in today's world, you can't gain access to that world that you need to function in, because the whole world is going in that direction. The reason it is that now is we have a digital economy because so many people say it works, and if you're left out of that digital economy, let me tell you, you're stuck. You better know this stuff. One of the things we're doing at Digitunity, which is so important, very important, is putting in, when we're working with companies, developing asset management methodologies that give them a steady stream of where their old stuff can go, and they would be reassured that it would not be wasted, it would be properly handled, and that why are we doing Digital Connect, that software that we use? For the same reason. You have to have an accurate inventory so that companies can trust you with their equipment and that it was being disposed of properly, and that it was something that can maintain the validity of our message, that we want to make sure that not only we can thrive, but that our world can thrive because of the way we use equipment. We have not been afraid at Digitunity to take on the battle of doing it right, doing it logically, and enabling us to say in good conscience that we are taking care of inventory at the same time that we're taking care of our planet, at the same time that we are enabling people with special needs of any sort, whatever their background. If they need it, we'll get them a computer. We need to keep that in mind. Computers are a tool, but only in the right hands are they valuable. They're not just a product that you can toss in the waste streams that e-stewards and others are guarding this planet against. I think that we have a major responsibility, all of us, collectively, but it's not just to the equipment, it's to the people. If we do not remember why we're doing this, then we shouldn't be doing this. We have to engage each other and trust that engagement. And the ecosystems that are being used now by everybody in one way or another are only effective if we have done a good job of thinking, how many helpers can we get into that system, that ecosystem, that could enable us to use technology effectively, because without the technology, we are locked out. And we have to cut off that digital divide. That's not right. It's okay if you're a dreamer. I dreamt once, still dreaming. Where are we going with all of this? Come with me, and we'll dream together.